it's morphed into Paul Ryan, his key policy architect now on this, unable to even come up with one explanation of how we actually fund that. So look at that one policy and look at its trajectory. That's what journalists are grappling with, to go from something that starts with a very few amount of facts, that then is, completely turned around in terms of something you actually cannot understand where they're coming from, how they're actually going to pay for what is coming out of his mouth in terms of how they're going to move forward. We cannot sort of grapple in this world and try to look to how we're going forward if that's the way we're going to deal with policy in this country going forward. Or even Paul Ryan can't even come up with an explanation on how they're going to pay for something like the wall, which is a key prescriptive policy of his administration.
Well, what about the folks who voted for Donald Trump? They heard wall, they want to see a wall, and they may get their wall. What about the base?
There's no question that he's playing to the base. And there's no question that, as we said, there is a large wall in Mexico for large portions of that 1,200-mile border. They will want to hear this, but what's going to happen is when your taxes get increased because we're paying for that kind of thing, when your manufacturing jobs actually can no longer come to America because of the wall, and that's one thing that people don't factor into this, there's a huge benefit in terms of having a zero tariff policy with Mexico and allowing a free transplant of not only the labor force, but of manufacturing. It's actually increased jobs in America. It's actually increased our manufacturing base. These are companies that have relocated to Mexico, not because it's cheaper, not because it's more efficient, but because they are able to deliver cheaper products to America. If you're going to make your entire administration on bolstering middle-class prosperity, if you're going to make your entire administration on making America great again, you're going to have to make that case to America that the entire prosperity is a globalized society, and that's the one thing that his administration is going to be really stuck on proving. You build a wall with Mexico, you build a wall with Europe, you build a wall with Asia, that's going to hurt those very workers that came out in Michigan, that came out in Ohio, that came out in Wisconsin and voted for you. And that's the one thing he really risks going forward.
Linda, Jeremy, stand by for 1 second because we've been talking about the wall. Let's get a report from there. Gadi Schwartz, our correspondent out of Los Angeles, is in Nogales, Arizona, as you can see, along the fence on the U.S.-Mexico border. And Gadi, when we talk about this wall, what does it mean there locally? What are we here in New York talking about?
Well, we've been talking to people along this wall here in Nogales, Arizona all day. We've also been talking to people through this fence right here in Nogales, Mexico. In fact, right across the way here, this is a bus stop. It's also a gathering spot where a lot of people throughout the day would come and meet their family members. Now, both of these communities overwhelmingly are completely opposed to this fence. They're completely opposed to this wall. In fact, they say that this fence isn't really that effective when it comes down to people that want to cross. They say that they've seen people get over this fence in about 15 seconds, but for families that have been separated, this is kind of hallowed ground. They come here, they talk to each other through these gates. It's a very emotional time. Many of them aren't able to cross over to Mexico because
alaikum.
Status here in the United States, and they fear losing it. And many people that they're talking to on the other side of the fence have been deported. In fact, just a little while ago, we spoke to one woman who was seeing her sister for the first time in 11 years. Her whole family gathered. Her little nephew was there. He was had a lot of different opinions. Here's some of what we heard. Take a listen.
Está muy mal.
Do you think Donald Trump's bad? ¿Y por qué? Why?
Pero no voy a poder ver a mis familiares de aquí.
He says that he won't be able to see his family members here. ¿Y qué has escuchado del muro? What have you heard about the wall?
De que nosotros lo vamos a pagar.
You've heard that you guys are going to pay for the wall. ¿Has escuchado que ustedes lo van a pagar? ¿Y qué piensas de eso? What do you think of that?
De que estaría muy mal para nosotros.
He says that would be very bad for them.
It's really hard to see again, or maybe you never see again. I think it's ridiculous. It separates the family, and then it's just a waste of money.
Everybody paid it. Now, you heard that first interview. That was with a little kid in Mexico who had heard that Donald Trump wants Mexico to pay for this wall. It's something that we have heard from a lot of people on this side of the wall, a lot of people that have chosen to stay in Mexico for many of those manufacturing jobs, possibly saying that they have stayed in Mexico. There is no reason why they should have to pay for a wall that they have not asked for, that they do not support. But when it comes to their president, Enrique Peña Nieto, many of them also saying they don't trust him. They right now his approval rating's at about 12%. He's scheduled to meet with Donald Trump next week, but many of them say that they fear they may end up footing this bill. Brian?
Gotti Schwartz in Nogales. Gotti, thank you for that. That really brings home the issue of the wall to our viewers up close and immediately. Linda, this is one of the issues we've seen roll out. We're in day 3, working days of the Trump presidency. There you were Saturday. What may prove to be the largest combined outdoor gathering in our nation's history. This was one of the issues. How do you keep that founding spirit alive and keep attention on all of these issues that were so important to that event?
I mean, the Women's March on Washington was the largest protest in U.S. history. As you know, we had 600 sister marches across the world, and most of whom were in the United States of America. And the momentum is going to continue. And Donald Trump is a motivating factor in here. And even for those folks who voted for Donald Trump, some of them are coming to our side. They're starting to understand that Donald Trump is a real problem for poor people, for working class people. And I also want to make sure that people understand that Donald Trump doesn't have a mandate. So he may be talking to the base, but he is the president of the United States of America. He is the president of all Americans. Majority of Americans do not support a wall. They do not support us paying for a wall. The American public supports resources here, and particularly around immigration. We support a pathway to citizenship and ensuring that there's a legal path for people to become citizens in this country. So I'm letting people know that the Women's March on Washington and those allies that are supporting us, we will maintain the momentum. And in 2018, those members of Congress who are supporting Donald Trump are going to find themselves in a lot of trouble. So I hope that they stand up and understand that supporting Donald Trump and his policies is going to put them at risk in 2018 elections.
Jeremy Bash, as often happens, the day's news veered into your area of expertise. Let's start on torture. How does the conversation of torture, when it's broached, when you hear politicians new to the craft or veterans talking about how it works, how does that strike you as a CIA veteran?
Well, I think other CIA veterans are really uncomfortable with going back to the days of using harsh interrogation techniques. Everyone I've talked to today has said, we don't think it's necessary. And the reason, Brian, is we haven't engaged in waterboarding since 2004. We haven't had any detainees in the black sites since 2006 when President Bush, not President Obama, President Bush, emptied those black sites. We've been able to protect our country for the last decade without those black sites and without those harsh interrogation techniques, precisely because we've had well-resourced, well-planned, sophisticated counterterrorism plans. Just to go back to the wall for a minute, if we had $14 billion to protect the country, I think the last thing that intelligence professionals would do was put it into a concrete wall. They would use it to give it to the CIA and other intelligence agencies to try to keep our country safe.
To our guests, thank you for tonight. We're going to keep going on the subject of the CIA, what the president